So Lag BaOmer is an incredible day, and that's what I want to talk about now in our discussion. So friends, what I want to zero in on is the bow and arrow. You may know that the bow and arrow is the symbol of Lag BaOmer. Why is it the symbol? So the simple, basic historical reason is this. What is Lag BaOmer? The 33rd day of the Omer is the day when, the Talmud tells us, actually it doesn't. The Talmud tells us this, that Rabbi Akiva had 22, Rabbi Akiva, the great sage, had 22,000 students, the creme de la creme of Israel, the future of Israel. A terrible plague affected them, and they died between Pesach and Shavuos for a period of 33 days. And then the plague ended. So Lag BaOmer's day 33, according to some opinions, that's when the plague ended, actually on day 33. Other opinions say no, the plague was 33 days between Pesach and Shavuos. There's three opinions as to how you count the 33 days. But everybody agrees, we pick day number 33 from the beginning of the count. Either it ended that day, or that's the day we designate as the day to recall the end of the plague. That doesn't make this day a big simcha. The plague is over, it's a sigh of relief. It doesn't make it a day of joy and celebration. I'll soon tell you why and how it became a day of simcha. But this already connects us to the bow and arrow. Why? Because what did you just hear? The Lamed Gimel, the 33rd day of the Omer, is the day which is designated, or actually was the day, that marks the end of the plague that decimated the students of Rabbi Akiva. So it calls our attention to Rabbi Akiva and his students. By association, we recall another story recorded in the Talmud. Rabbi Akiva lived under Roman persecution. In the end, he was martyred by the Romans. They murdered him, they tortured him, they combed his body with steels of iron, and he died with Shema Yisrael on his lips. And we tell the story Yom Kippur, the 10 martyrs, Yom Kippur, we tell the story Yom Kippur Musaf, the Musaf, when the shul is most empty because it's the hardest part of the fast. So Rabbi Akiva lived under Roman persecution. At one time, the Romans forbade the study of Torah under penalty of death. They crushed the people. They didn't care, study Torah, don't study Torah. It's the spirit of rebellion they wanted to crush. Bar Kokhba led a rebellion that seemed to be successful. Rabbi Akiva supported him and said he was the Mashiach. It all collapsed. So the Romans were constantly making sure to break the spirit. A Jew and Torah is inseparable. So if you forbid the Torah study, any national aspirations of independence, gone. So they forbade the study of Torah. What did Rabbi Akiva do? He would go out into the field with his students, and they would portray themselves as hunting in the field. And if they were surprised by a Roman garrison, they'd put away the scrolls and take out the bow and arrow as if they were hunting in the field. So it's been traditional for a long time that Lag BaOmer, the kids don't have school at least half a day. And as a child, I remember, we go to the parks with bows and arrows to recall Rabbi Akiva in the fields, in the forest, with the bows and arrows and his disciples. That's one meaning of the bow and arrow. And again, that's associated with what? With the Rabbi Akiva and his students, since this whole Omer period is all about his students. But friends, there's a much deeper meaning. What makes Lag BaOmer the big simcha that it is another event. And paradoxically, it's the passing of someone. What's the story? After the 22,000 students, the decimation of Akiva rebuilt Yiddishkeit with 5 students. 5 students started it all over again. A new yeshiva and a new future. Rabbi Meir, Rabbi Huda, Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Elazar, Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai. The greatest was Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai. This Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai, my friends, listen to the history carefully. Not only was he the greatest Talmudic halachic legal authority of all the sages, there is not one chapter in all of the Mishnah which is not quoted in every subject, from the laws of torts, damages, to the laws of impurity, marriage, Yom Tov, blessings, everything. In addition to being this great scholar in Jewish law, he's most famous for teaching the Zohar, the author of the Zohar. What's the Zohar? The Zohar is the Kabbalah, the inner dimension of Torah, the soul of Torah. He didn't write it, but he authored it, and his disciples wrote it. Now, the Zohar, friends, which was studied by Rabbi Shimon and some of his contemporaries, not all of them, soon after Rabbi Shimon died, fact, the Zohar disappeared. Gone. Now, we know that throughout the millennia, there were sages that were privy to the teachings and knew about the Zohar's teachings, including the Rambam. But it's not obvious. And it certainly wasn't available to the masses and even not the scholars. Till 600 years ago, all of a sudden, out of nowhere, it resurfaced. There was an Arab merchant. Somehow he had these manuscripts, and he sold it for a princely sum to the scholar of Moishe of Lyon. He looks at this, and this must be the long-lost Zohar. It was a question of debate and discussion. 200 years later, came along the Arizal, who all Jews accepted as an authentic Jewish leader, scholar, and he authenticated the Zohar. This is it, and he began to expound it, and the teachings of Kabbalah were born before the Arizal even. But I'm just making it general. Here's the kicker. The Zohar, in the Zohar, we read that he died like Omer. In the Zohar, we read, Rabbi Shimon said on the day of his death, I'm asking this day be a day of celebration. In the Zohar, we read that on the day of his death, he revealed profound secrets of the Torah. Recorded there in the Zohar. So, therefore, when the Zohar was discovered, all of a sudden, Lag BaOmer gets a whole new dimension, this mystical dimension, the teachings of Rabbi Shimon by Yochai. So you notice, friends, and I'm happy to tell you that what I'm going to tell you now is every year is changing. That's the good news. But it used to be who celebrated Lag BaOmer as a celebration. Why do we light fires, first of all? Fires because Zohar means light or splendor. Fire represents the soul. We light the outside candle. The neshama is a flame. Like a flame always goes up, the soul is always yearning for connection to God. The flame brings light and warmth. If we reveal our neshama, we bring light and warmth to the world. That's why we come to the world, to brighten it and to bring warmth. And the Zohar is the soul of Torah, the neshama of Torah. So hence the custom to light bonfires and celebrate and sing songs in praise of Rabbi Shimon by Yochai. So who does this? The Sephardic world and the Hasidic world. And I'm happy to say the yeshiva world, with each passing year, more and more are participating in celebrating Lag BaOmer. Why the Hasidic and the Sephardic world? The Hasidic world is because it's all based on the Kabbalah. Hasidus is based on the teachings of the Zohar and the Kabbalah. And all the early Kabbalist friends were all from Italy, North Africa, Morocco, Israel. There was Sephardim. So the disciple, the Arizal himself was a Sephardi. He lived from Egypt. So all the great early Kabbalists who was studying the teachings of the Zohar and sharing it with their flock were the great Sephardic rabbis. So the Sephardic world embraced immediately this whole mystical dimension, this new discovery, the Zohar, and it became part of the culture. The European Jews did not, and there was great opposition, and that's a story for another time. But the Hasidic world did, and hence, in the Hasidic world, all over, by you, it's going to be Thursday night, and in the Sephardic world, there's big gatherings, and especially Miron, where the Rashbi is interned this year because of COVID. Last year was even more restricted. I don't know what the numbers are, but in the past, 750,000 more gather in Miron for Lag BaOmer. Now I want to conclude with the bow and arrow. So what am I saying now? Lag BaOmer, some more information you have to know. Lag BaOmer has, in the last few centuries, because of the discovery of the Zohar and the birth of the Hasidic movement, the dissemination of the teachings of Kabbalah through Hasidus and so on, this day is this profoundly mystical day, as Rabbi Shimon had asked, on this day celebrate, because my death, my soul is forever. My soul is revealed even more after my death. This is a day which celebrates the soul of the Yid, the soul of the Torah. So this has to be a day of celebration. And moreover, he's really saying, the day will come, we will conquer death, even physical death, when these teachings will be revealed. So I want to share with you two prophecies in the Zohar that are very critical. Number one, in the Zohar, you can look it up yourself, Parshas Noach. It's available in English. Rabbi Shimon Yochai makes a prophecy and he says that in the 6th century of the 6th millennium, there'll be an explosion of knowledge in the world, mystical and scientific, and that will start then and prepare the world for Mashiach's coming. And it happened. He's talking about between the mid 18th century, mid 19th century, with the big strides in even earlier. The mid 1700s to the mid 1800s, it's that 100 years. Big strides in science. That's when Hasidus came on the world, exploded on the world. Mystical knowledge, scientific knowledge, and they'll work together, he says, to usher in the era of divine enlightenment and the Messianic era when the whole world is filled with the knowledge of Hashem. It's a prophecy he writes thousands of years ago. Another prophecy is, in the generation before Mashiach comes, children will study my teachings. And this is our generation. Our generation, really from the youngest age, our children are told and taught the big revolutionary teachings based on the Kabbalah. Number one, that the purpose is this world, not heaven. Hashem desires a dwelling place here. Number two, every Jew has a soul that's equal. That's a huge revolution. The core of every Yid is the same, neshama. 3, divine providence, that Hashem is intimately involved in every detail of life, and many other teachings that our kids know today. Friend, this is right out of the pages of the Kabbalah, Zohar and Chassidus. It's about the here and now. The physical act connects us to Hashem in the deepest way. The body isn't the enemy, the body is to be engaged. Hashem wants a dwelling place here in this world. Heaven serves earth, not earth serves heaven. So Rashbi says, these teachings that I'm teaching you now will be taught for the generation before Mashiach comes. And it's our generation. That's why the Rebbe came out with the Lag BaOmer parades, where the children bring the message, the soul of Yiddishkeit to the street, to the world. Now the bow and arrow. So finally the bow and arrow, now the symbolism of it. Now, on a deeper level, in addition to the story of Rabbi Akiva and his students in the fields, is the following. The bow and arrow is the symbol of Kabbalah and Hasidus. Why? Because the bow and arrow is a paradox. The person who first discovered it was a genius. What's the idea of a bow and arrow? In combat. So before the bow and arrow, you fought hand to hand, a spear, a sword. Then even a spear you can throw, but how far can you throw? So the bow and arrow, the person grasps that you pull the tension. You pull back on the bow away from your intended target, and the stronger you pull back, the further the arrow will fly and reach distances far beyond your strength, your ability, by exploiting the tension of the bow, by pulling back. So this is the symbol of Chassidus. And Kabbalah, which Rabbi Shimon Yochai began to teach, and then for a long time by divine design it was hidden, and at the end of exile it emerges, and the Hasidic movement is born, and here we are. What's the bow and arrow? What's Chassidus? Chassidus is the depth. It's the deepest level of Torah. It reveals the soul of Torah, the neshama, the soul of who is God, who is a Yid. the deepest mysteries of life, which is why many people say we don't go there, it's too deep, it's mystical, we deal only with the basics. Here's the paradox. When you're empowered with the depth of Torah, the arrow shoots the furthest. We can illuminate the furthest dark corner of the world. That's the bow and arrow. By digging deep, and here's the paradox. The world is aching for it. The world wants to know God. The world wants to know the depth. The world wants to know Hasidus. The world wants to know Hashem. Look what's happening in the world today. It's crazy on the surface. This new liberalism that has gone to ridiculous, often comical lengths. It's a corruption of a very wonderful, deep truth. Yes, at the core level, we're all equal. It's really a quest for the unifying spark of divine that all people have. But if that quest isn't guided by Torah, it ends up doing the opposite. Tearing down walls and creating anarchy and chaos. And the opposite of justice. That's a whole parsha not to go into right now. But the root of it, the root is really a longing. The root of it, the stirrings of it is really, the world is seeking. The world is seeking Hashem. That's what the world is. Our children are seeking Hashem. The world is thirsting for the teachings, the soul, the living waters, the well springs of Torah. That's why Shlichus is born in our generation. What did the Rebbe do? The arrow to the furthest Anchorage, Alaska, and New Zealand, and Auckland, and all over the world. Who's the Rebbe sending? He's sending young boys and girls steeped in Chassidus. Neshama, these are Neshama Jews. In touch with their own neshama, and will touch that neshama in somebody else. That's the only one that can go to the end of the world and make the transformation, the revolution. It's only if you're in touch with the source, your own source, the depth of one's being. That's the arrow, the bow and arrow. So the bottom line, friends, I want to tell you, this is the bottom line, maybe not the bottom line, but a bottom line. Tonight and tomorrow, Friday, Lag BaOmer, is a moire dike day. I should tell you that by our Rebbe, it was a day we saw open miracles. There were always miracles, especially when it came to children, especially childless couples, brachas, children, and nachas from children, and also in pandas and health and everything. The plague stopped Lag BaOmer, friends. Tremendous power on this day. So what should you do? To make yourself a vessel for the power, for the brachas of this day. Tonight, tomorrow, a little extra tzedakah, a little extra Torah. Most importantly, talk to your children by the family, at least at the meal Friday night, but supper Thursday night, tonight, by you tonight. Talk about Lag BaOmer. Share a teaching, Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai, Rabbi Akiva, who taught, love your fellows yourself is the great principle of the Torah. Again, it's the neshama. We're all equal neshama. It's a powerful, powerful day. Send a note to the Oyel. Learn a little Hasidus more. You can do it online, Chabad.org, MTC as a whole, YouTube of channels, short teaching, a long teaching. It's a mighty day. Fabreng, if you can. The main thing is everybody should be blessed. Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai, the author of the Zohar, his teachings are finally being realized. It's all coming now around. The prophecies said thousands of years ago are unfolding before our eyes. The children, the science, the dissemination of the soul of Torah, it's happening before our very eyes. The world is in great turmoil. The world is in it's birth pangs. It's the birth pangs, confusion of something great and wonderful. And that great and wonderful is nothing less than Mashiach's coming. And that is up to you and I. Another mitzvah, another connection to another yid, goodness, kindness, and we'll end the golus, illuminate the darkest reaches of the world, transforming it all into light and making the whole world into a home for Hashem, which He shares with us, and we share together with the whole world. So, Lag BaOmer Sameach, Afelech Lag BaOmer, and a good Shabbos. And wonderful seeing you all.
Thank you so much, Rabbi.